And next up, we have a panel discussion that will be chaired by Saga Arora. Yes, I pass the microphone to you. And I'll help you with the chairs.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I would like to invite Haran Garcia, Karen Johnson, Timo Perella, and Alexandre François. So, hello everyone, I am Sagar Arora. I am a solutions architect at OpenAirInterface, and I am also a TSC member, Technical Steering Committee member at Nefio project. We're going to talk about the Nefio project. So today's panel is about end-to-end 5G with Nefio and Silva, showcasing it with the OAI. So we're going to talk about these two projects, Nefio and Silva. They are two projects of foundation networking, and we're going to talk about that these two projects. So let's start with the introduction of our speakers. To go with Karen Johnson, he is a senior expert in OSS and programmable network architecture and the chief architect of Ericsson's network management product portfolio. He has over 20 years of experience in software development and architecture in the OSS domain. He's also a TSC member at Nefio. Then Hanan Garcia. He is the Global Telco Solutions Manager at Red Hat with over 20 years of experience in the telecommunication industry. He is the board member at OpenAirInterface Software Alliance, Linux Foundation Networking, and Silva. And then there is Alexandre François. He's working at Orange as a business owner of the product providing Silva to Orange affiliates, a private cloud for hosting virtual network functions and container network functions or cloud native network functions. And previously, he was the tech leader of the Livebox Pro. He has about 10 years of experience in the cloud activities. And then there is Timo Perella. He is the head of open source service and network automation at Nokia. He has over 30 years of experience in network systems ranging from multi-vendor interoperability verification systems and architecture research and new business incubation to mobile networks and open source system standardization. He's also a TSC member at Nefio. So I'll start putting forward some questions. That's about the panel. So how does the stack of a cloud native telecommunication networks looks like? What are the challenges in the different layers of the stack? I'll pass on the mic to you, please. So it's a question to all of you. I'll let you decide how you would like to take it forward.
Yeah, I can start.
Yes.
The main challenge for a network function is to comply with a new model that was introduced by Lorenzo at the last slide, where there is a split between the software making happen the network function and the hardware below. So previously, when in Orange we wanted to have a network function in our premise, we were buying some, we were sourcing a silo, vertical stack, provided by Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, ZTE, whatever you want. And it was monolithic. Now, what we want to achieve is this new model, where there is a split between the software, network function is the software, and it is hosted in a cloud. So cloud at the bottom, the ground floor, and then the software on which we make happen the network function. And the main challenge is as soon as there is two layers, so two possible suppliers, Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, ZTE are now providing the network function as a software, there will be someone supplying and operating, someone else operating and providing the cloud. It means there is two stacks, two life cycles. And the main challenge is to have two life cycles in the world happening every day, in our everyday life. And we need to operate and organize this life cycle in the cloud and organize the life cycle in the bottom for the software. And Silva is one of the solutions to the cloud operating cloud lifecycle, because it's a full stack, a lot of scripts to make it happen, this lifecycle. This is one of the main challenges that we have to achieve.
A very good answer. It's hard to follow up on that, but I'll try and, I think one of the things I found in about the last sort of decade and a half since virtualization and containerization started becoming the delivery model of the future, and now it's the delivery model very much of the present. I think the previous presenter mentioned how it's so much easier today when you want to start a startup to go out and basically buy some services from a cloud vendor rather than going and buying your own hardware, putting your own software on it, figuring out how to build that full vertical stack, so it becomes much easier to get into that market. But one of the trade-offs is, I think that certainly in the early days of virtualization, the expectation was that the workloads weren't that stateful. They didn't have a lot of sort of, you could kill them and restart them again. That was fairly straightforward to do. And the network functions that we have tended to be, as you said, they're quite tightly coupled to the hardware that they come with. They have a lot of expectations on that hardware and what processors they run on and so forth. So introducing that horizontalization layer and leveraging the technologies that are coming out of the IT industry and the slightly less sort of, I guess, performant and characteristics sensitive workloads like network functions makes it challenging. So I think it's been very interesting over the last decade to see how technologies like Kubernetes have arrived. They're there for stateless workloads, and over time they've become progressively more capable in terms of supporting more stateful workloads, in terms of handling databases, in terms of handling failovers on message buses and so on, in order that workloads like telco workloads, which are very, very sensitive to those sorts of failures, can start to run in a much more performant way. And that horizontalization, I think, requires us to introduce very good boundaries between the different layers, very good understanding of what each layer is responsible for and what the applications and the workloads running on top of those layers are responsible for. We've been sort of, I guess, negotiating those boundaries over the last number of years. I think standardization and things like that will help to drive that forward, and understanding where those roles and responsibilities lie so that we can make a success out of this.
Okay, so sounds like it's getting progressively more difficult to add anything here. So I don't and I won't disagree with what colleagues have said. So maybe I just concentrate on like the stack that we see here. I mean, all those boundaries are important, so it's difficult to put them in any priority order, but I would kind of focus or bring up two of them. I think something that Kieran said, this network functions and cloud platform. I think that's one crucial place where we need to get things right so that we get this separation of concerns, like what it was in the first answer, like somebody delivering the network functions to, or they can be agnostic of the environment where they are being put. That's of course the dream. We are not there yet. There's a lot of things we need to do. So, but that boundary is an important one. And I think with the cloud native approach, the other one would be the boundary between the network functions and the network function orchestration. And there, I mean that the cloud native would allow us to kind of separate the actual application orchestration from the workload orchestration. So if the lower part, the network function or the workload orchestration is taken care by the cloud native paradigm, it kind of makes life a little bit simpler when we move up towards the application orchestration. So all of those kind of steps on the way up on the stack are well, sort of well defined, but they are not. So we in our minds we have a good understanding of how it works. Now we just need to figure out how it works.
That's way true. That leave almost no room for adding more. But I will give a view on that. So, and maybe I'm going to focus on the cloud platform. I think Kieran mentioned it before, right? There has been this evolution on the network, on the segregation and abstraction. OpenStack was first project out there that actually came changed together with Etsy and FB, can change the architecture on many networks out there. OpenStack still there. I believe, I will not say numbers, but I believe at least 80% of the telcos out there are relying, 4G networks are relying on virtualization technology with OpenStack. Now there is 5G coming up and the rise of Kubernetes, so things come together, and what we are seeing is most of the deployments that are happening on 5G, and for a reason, right? The technology is there for a cloud-native platform with Kubernetes, and new developments have to be done for 5G. So all what we're seeing is those deployments being Kubernetes-based deployment, 5G, that we believe is going to be a long-term platform for, I believe, I hope, for 6G as well, unless there is new technology that come up. But with all of that we need to understand that we are putting a layer of abstraction between the infrastructure, that is, in this case, what we are seeing as hardware, that is evolving at the same time, and is rapidly evolving, right? We haven't seen many actors in that area, continuous evolution in terms of CPU generations, CPU architectures. Now we have the same is happening on the network equipment, on the NICs. Same is happening now with what we call the DPUs, with more processing capabilities. And to that, we need to be able to abstract, because this is what we expected, right? We're expecting network functions that are easily deployed in a cloud-native layer. But being able as well for the network function to leverage those capabilities that are abstracted, that are present in the hardware, and being abstracted. And this is a big challenge as well. So there is a lot of effort happening on many communities out there, especially not only on Kubernetes, but as well on the Linux Foundation networking and others, trying to make this transparent as much as possible. Of course, that comes with, I would say, constraint, for the lack of a better words. And those constraints is what we, in the community, at least on the Kubernetes community, and now the CNTI community, define as the cloud-native principles. So for all of this to work, we need applications that are actually truly cloud-native and can actually survive on such environment. And this is as well an ongoing challenge that we're seeing. But we're on the Red Hat side, we are working with all the communities out there, with all hardware partners and as well software partners. You have some of them here, into making this a viable. It is viable, making this near to what we dream as a platform for the operators, especially when we are looking at starting new specification, as Lorenzo was mentioning, for 6G.
I just add one more point. I think the question of why we're doing this, I mean, why are we introducing all of these horizontal layers? It's not just to enable people to go out and sort of shop around for hardware and shop around for different network functions. Some of the benefits of being able to decide where you're going to run certain workloads. So for example, if you can put certain workloads very, very close to the edge, and other workloads that maybe are quite sort of CPU and resource intensive but don't have such latency requirements, if you can move them more to the central sites, then you can actually run your networks much more efficiently, much more dynamically. You can change them much more dynamically. So the benefits here are really, really significant in terms of operating highly efficient networks and sort of getting many more use cases out there. So I think that sort of end-to-end orchestration sitting over the top as well, I think, is very important. Once you have all these layers in place, you can start to mix and match different workloads, run them in different places, which of course requires very robust interfaces.
That's quite true. All these challenges which you have really highlighted out in every single layer which is there, because every single layer they have its own challenges. So now we're gonna move forward with layer by layer in a way. So what is the story behind Silva project, and what challenges it is trying to address. So I'm going to ask this question to Hanan and Alexander, both of you, since both of you are pretty much heavily involved in these two projects.
Okay, now I remove my red hat, I put my silver hat. Silva is a very interesting project. The goal, well, we have a member here, a founding member of here, is have main two goals. The first goal is to actually define what a cloud-native telco look like, or a telco platform look like. And this is part of one of the challenges that we're seeing, right? That many operators out there have their own view and their own implementation of either an OpenStack-based platform or Kubernetes-based platform. And what we are trying to achieve here is to have a common framework that everybody can actually build on top of. And the second goal that the Silva project have is to create this reference implementation, so that we show that this is viable, actually, and having this framework of validation that might allow the ecosystem to be part as well of that project. I don't know.
Yeah. One of the main challenge, of course, is adoption of Silva. That's why we need to onboard a lot of actors, a lot of network function to be tested on top of it as a standard. So it's to promote Silva as a standard number one. There is a lot of stakes behind it, because previously you talked about OpenStack, and OpenStack was not so efficient for Edge. Silva is efficient for Edge, so this is one answer to your point. There is an Edge challenge to pass, to achieve, and there is maturation of Silva. We are making effort to deliver SRIOV on Silva, on VM, or on Silva, on bare metal. There's a lot of technical stakes. And we are also wanting to enlarge the technology of Silva, and this is a private message for you, Redat. We are waiting for OpenShift on Silva. I know the story has started, but we need now to finish. So you can see the challenge inside it, and as soon as we have delivered the stack, the challenge will be operational, because it's a new technology, it's a new product. We need to operate it, we need to maintain it, we need to ramp up the skills on top of it, and everybody needs to ramp up now on Silva. So please welcome on Silva.
I would like to add, if you can also explain a little bit about this, how the whole workflow happens in Silva. If one of you can just, highlight about it.
If you can, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add to what he was mentioning. So it's gonna be there on the next release. Is we keep the plan going. And basically, so one of the things that Silva have been profoundly and big of the work have been done by the Orange team, basically is making sure that we can actually spawn and create cloud-native clusters independently of the infrastructure on which those are going to be working. And there is a lot of open source technology that is in there, beyond just Kubernetes being the base layer there. But as you can see there, we have Flux, that is basically one of the engine for the management of the creation on the life cycle of those clusters that are going to be created for actually hosting the workload, the network functions in that case. And there is the work that's being done and we're trying to achieve in trying to have this specification of how we define those clusters depending on the intent for which the workloads are going to be running. So when we need a cluster that is more focusing on edge, or we need a cluster that requires specific capabilities for the core user plane compared to the core signaling plane, and the same goes for the radio access network. So there is work that is being done there. The operational part on execution and creating the different clusters on different technologies. In this case, we are able right now to have Kubernetes on bare metal and as well Kubernetes on top of OpenStack. And there is a lot of effort in the standardization of how those clusters are creating using the CAPI interface on Kubernetes, for example. But as well, we have created capo for OpenStack that didn't exist. So there is a lot of work that's being put into the architecture. There is, of course, more work that needs to be done into documenting how the whole architecture works. But yeah, it's a quite recent project. Let's be honest. It's doing a lot of stridence in the industry. We have big operators behind it. We have big network equipment vendors as well, and most of the vendors providing cloud infrastructure are participating in the project as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Han. So I'll go forward with what is the Nefio project and what are the challenges it is trying to address?
Let's take one more. Okay, thanks. So we take turns here. So I will try to explain the right-hand side of the picture, and then Kieran will take the left-hand side. So Nefio, as hopefully many of you know it exists, is now 3 years. I think we are in the third year now. And so it's like, well, Hanne said, Silva is has been there for a short while. Nefio is the same. And I think also quite interestingly, it has gained traction in the industry fairly quickly. So success in that sense, I would claim. The list of names over there is not necessarily for us to go through one by one, but I think it just goes to show that there's a fairly wide representation across the stack that we saw in the first slide. Couple of notable omissions maybe, or something that we are missing. Couple of in Nefio the project, we probably would do well if we had a couple of web scalers added to the roster. I believe LF Networking is putting some effort in trying to correct that, so it would be probably more basis for even bigger success for the project. So we have organized ourselves in, well, you see those SIGs over there. So it's basically network architecture is about coming up with the use cases. So the whole development cycle of a release, which is 6 months, is driven by use cases. So they are being defined first, and then the automation team is the one that delivers all the nice working software. Well, release and security are of course kind of easily understandable. So that's how we roll, and I think we have been. Now we are on our fourth. We are working on our fourth release. So we got our third out end of July this year, and yeah, I guess from here then explaining what we try to achieve.
Yeah, so I think to understand, I'll actually stick to the other slide just because it's a little bit easier to explain in terms of where we're coming from. But I guess to understand the genesis of Nefio, you have to look back into the genesis of sort of cloud native computing and the Kubernetes platform in particular. Maybe a decade ago, there was probably 20 different container orchestration platforms or something like that. Kubernetes pretty much sort of rose up as being the de facto one that everybody pretty much settled on in the industry. But at that point in time, it was fairly basic. It could spin up containers, tear them back down again, lifecycle manage them. If your workload didn't fit into the container pattern and wasn't sort of amenable to that type of orchestration, then you had to pretty much go and find something else. Over time, as I said earlier, database support, the support for sort of the operator pattern to be able to allow sort of people who deliver more complex workloads to also deliver some business logic that can run in the Kubernetes platform as an operator that can help to manage those workloads through installation, through upgrade, et cetera, et cetera. That pattern is actually very, very powerful. It allows for stateful workloads or workloads that are very sensitive to changes in the way that they're operating to manage and to work with the Kubernetes platform in order to be able to manage those state changes. So once you get into the point where you have this operator pattern, then you can start to say maybe Kubernetes as a platform is something in which we can build a lot more automation in terms of how we do network rollouts, how we do sort of software upgrades and installs and all the rest of it at scale. So this is where, I guess, the value proposition of Nephi is coming from. Build on Kubernetes, use the Kubernetes primitives, use the modeling language, the Kubernetes resource model as a way to describe those workloads, and then you've got a kind of a single platform that allows you to deploy your actual platform itself, then to deploy the workloads on those platform, and then to configure those workloads once they're up and running. So that's kind of the three swim lanes. If you look at this picture, it's kind of on the left-hand side is three, it's the left, isn't it? Yeah, as three sort of verticals. Then the very left vertical is about sort of how we deploy infrastructure, getting clusters and so on up and running. I think that's where Silva and Nefio can have some very interesting touch points. The middle one is about deploying the workloads, so the containers, databases, message buses, whatever it is that you have in your actual application in order to deliver its business value. And then on the right-hand side of the swim lanes is the actual business value, the network function or the function of the network, managing that in operation, making sure that it's optimized and running and performing as it should do. So that's kind of where Nefio is aiming to hit. Most of the value that we've done has kind of been on the middle swim lane with some sort of forays to the left and a little bit of a foray to the right. And then we've been looking at primarily in the Nefio community, we've been looking at working with sort of free 5G core and OpenAirInterfaces, and kudos to Sagar for all of the effort that he's put in over the last couple of releases in getting Nefio as a platform to deploy OpenAirInterface, putting a lot of sort of really critical improvements to the platform in order to do that. So kudos to you.
Maybe just something I remembered when Kieran was explaining that two details maybe. We talk about open APIs at sort of north side, and one buzzword that we haven't used here yet is intent-based. So basically, those are the two buzzwords that go with Nefio all the time. It's Kubernetes-based and it's intent-based, and I think there is some kind of truth in it, and it carries some meaning also on both of them. And unfortunately, we have been fairly busy, like Kieran explained, on the middle swim lane and a little bit on the left-hand side and a little bit less, but still some on the right-hand side. So the northbound has been has not received the attention that it should in order for us to deliver something that people can actually then kind of test out and approve. Would be a proof for it being true, but that's definitely kind of in our minds. And I think the other trivia I wanted to highlight is that many people probably do remember and know that it's a project that Google started. And kudos for them. It was a good initiative. However, Nefio has been Linux Foundation networking project now for almost a year. So just to get that right, that okay, started by Google. Thanks for them for that. Now it's just a regular LFN project of LFN membership. Or members, so that's one. Because I come across to this quite often. That that's a company project, which is the misconception. There's a power in having this large community behind it, and I think we are happy to have that.
Thanks for adding that. I'd say, and I think one of the biggest things was intent, because I think that was one of the key points of Nefio, that it's intent-based orchestration. That's what we introduced, yeah. So the fourth question is more about...
I don't know how I managed to let you get the buzzwords in, Timo. That's just a disgrace. I'm going to have to go.
So to move forward, so what are the standardization activities and open source activities ongoing in ORAN, and how Nefio and Silva can participate? So it's a question to all of you. Would still love if you can discuss about it.
Okay, so maybe I start because I have hold on the mic. So yes, so okay, dive in directly without any preamble. So in Nefio we have had now for at least 2 releases a specific team focusing on kind of how Nefio fits into ORAN environment, and I think the next slide probably shows that. So that's a product of that the team that has been working on this one. So there is high interest in Nefio community on ORAN, and it's been coming up with half a dozen of use cases of kind of specifically in which areas. So the colored boxes over there on the left-hand side have been identified by now. In release 3 we had a couple of those use cases implemented, or the first attempts implemented, and then in release 4 going forward the journey will continue. So it's like in early phases, but there's definite plan to continue on that track. And at the same time, obviously, you can't dance by yourself. Well, you can, but let's say you can't tango. It takes 2 to tango. Let's put it this way. In open source ORAN software community, there is kind of similarly interest to collaborate with Nefio and see how those Nefio components fit into their stack and software. So I think from that kind of that's one very concrete example of how these communities work together and kind of help each other out, reaching the target that they have set for themselves. So good start, I would say.
Yeah, I guess the way I see this work has been is kind of the merging or the conjoining between the open source efforts and the standardization efforts. And I think one of the reasons why sort of telco has got engaged into open source projects is to try and short circuit some of the perceived sort of long cycles of standardization followed by then implementation and so on. And what I find the benefit here is that if you can do a little bit of standardization followed by some implementation, and standardization and implementation hand in hand, then you're going to get much more successful, not only in sort of specifying the interfaces and the contracts between the different components in your architecture, but also in terms of understanding the behaviors that are expected across those interfaces, because open source software really gives you the ability to collaborate on understanding what those behaviors will look like. So it's been, I think it's really powerful that the Nefio community are embracing the standardized APIs and embracing the fact that there are these sort of architectural constructs coming out of the ORAN community, and seeing how they can deliver a valuable component that fits into that architecture, plays a role that's very clearly defined and has a clearly defined set of boundaries and interfaces and can interact with other systems. I think that's really powerful.
If I come back to the introduction I made and the challenges of Silva, we highlighted the fact that Silva has to deliver Kubernetes and to organize, operate a lifecycle of it, and to address the edge use case. And if I summarize what I understood here, ORAN is very edge-oriented, and Nefio as Kubernetes as a keystone. So we have here all the components for a success. Silva provides Kubernetes for edge use case. Nefio uses Kubernetes, and ORAN can have its edge use case.
It's a very good question, and I think talking at the fourth tower is even difficult to add. But let's add on that. So there is definitively a space for collaboration between the different projects. The first work and the Nephew team has been doing an incredible job in putting the picture with ORAN. Now, everything in telco is not just RAN, as you just mentioned. Yes, RAN is going to be a very important part of it, especially with it coming soon. I will say it soon. The thing is, we need to account for the other part of the network, the complete network, right? The core distribution from centralized to distributed infrastructure in the edge for other use cases that we're looking at, and Nephew have a clear role to play in there, not just on the radio access network. There is already collaboration with the Silva project, so we are looking into how the two projects can come together. There was already a proof of concept that was done by the team network, the team. And that was part of this Silva Days.
And it was also presented at one summit. There was a live demo about.
Correct. And I think there will be more coming in next week. There will be OSS summit, and in Vienna there will be a mini summit for Silva as well. And we want to be discussing this kind of interactions, what is happening in the project, and how we're going to interact with different. Not just with Nephew, but ORAN and other communities out there.
Yeah. I'd like to add that also that even Silva started recently, proposing things in OSC that what can be done in different work groups of OSC, and similarly in Nephew since the beginning of this year, there is a dedicated group in Nephew which takes care of addressing certain challenges in the SMO side of ORAN, that what actually Nephew can add up to in what components of SMO in Nephew can really help in solving that. And one of them, couple of them, they're highlighted here, FOCOM and NFO, so these different components which actually, Nephew can really help to. So I think my second last question. Yeah.
Maybe just adding to that what you said, and kind of staring at that sort of architectural picture over there brought one thought to my mind, which is like sort of collaboration or synergies between standardization and open source. So I find it hard that any open source project would have come up with this picture. So it's kind of standardization is fairly good at taking on these complex systems and drawing some architectures around them or of them. And then open source projects, I think, are better in concentrating on some specific solutions, some pain points, and coming up with solution for those. And I think here that seems to be working quite well. So ORAN Alliance has come up with this kind of picture, and then certain open source projects can kind of identify themselves within that architecture and concentrate their in that architecture to where they think their kind of focus area is, and then the collaboration between the open source projects is necessary, because if Silva plays somewhere lower on the stack and Nephews so somewhere there above, then we need to collaborate in order to get that part right. But yes, so if somebody is thinking what's the kind of fruitful collaboration between open source and standardization, then in my view that's one of them. So getting the big picture, and then open source concentrating on kind of the detailed solutions.
Yeah. And it wasn't really easy to get this picture out there. It was really hard so that everybody agrees, because there are a lot of disputes, a lot of things. So, but after that, we managed to come up with a picture which really aligns with everything. So I had another question, but you all really answered all the time. saying that question because my other question was mostly, what are the commonalities between the two projects? Everybody already mentioned that. How the two projects can really collaborate with each other, and how one of the other can complement. So if you want to add something that how Nefio complements Silva, or how like Silva can complement Nefio, that would be nice.
Well, I can maybe start with kind of anecdotal evidence. In April this year, we had a Nefio kind of working session or developer event, and we had a wonderful opportunity of having a Silva presentation there coming from Silva community, and that was well received. There was a lot of interest, and everybody kind of agreed that there is a definite need and place for collaboration. Now it's always a little bit slow to start that kind of collaboration between communities, because both of us have our own headaches to solve first, and then the collaboration activity is an added burden on top of that. Now we just decided that we will have another Nefio developer event in a few weeks' time, and are planning we try to get again a Silva presence there in order to emphasize and make things move forward in this collaboration. So looking forward to that, and that's one practical thing, so that it's happening as we as we sit here and talk.
Yeah, I think it's important that we don't either by dint of maybe ignorance of what the other community is doing inadvertently start to implement things that are happening in the other community, and also maybe because, oh well, maybe Nefio isn't quite ready with X or Y, we'll do something in Silva to mitigate against that. I think if there's stuff you see missing from Nefio, come across and help Nefio, and vice versa. Let's sort of collaborate together and work together to build the best solution overall, rather than sort of necessarily competing in the same relatively small pool of resources.
Yeah, no, but I think it is good that you mentioned that. And I think on the Silva side has been straightforward on that. So collaboration with the different open source projects and associations out there is something that is critical for the project as well to last stand. There is, as I mentioned, there is already work that need to be done, of course, in alignment into what, and the same way that we have this picture, having the Nefio and Silva picture together, right? To understand what role each project plays into the big picture. There is, of course, capabilities that have been developed in Silva when it comes to lifecycle management of the cluster, which is one of the pillars that Nefio was. Now, the good thing about Nefio is this intent-based concept, right? And how we align that with the Silva, that will be, I think, one of the key work streams to develop as a relationship. And then come the other two pillars of Nefio as well, right? How that live into the rest of the picture. I have this dream of Nefio when we're at the very early stages where we say, yes, can I define my intent for what the service I want as an operator, not as I want a UPF or what I really want that service, that offer to my customers, and that's my intent, and have Nefio taking care of what needs to be done on their needs. So have this capability of abstraction. This is, I think, is important. And there is a lot of still work to be done to get there.
Maybe that'll be the 10th birthday of Nefio and Silva. That'll be the... Because it's great to see, actually, that this community here has been around for 10 years, and it has been really eye-opening to me as a newcomer here to see how you guys are working well together. You understand how well your software works, and you've got industry players here talking about how they're using it in solutions and using it in research, and so it's really cool to see. Sorry.
I think we have a complete set of answers. I don't find anything to add.
You can answer the next one. It's more about, so to wrap up now, to all this conversation, and to go towards the point that how collaborations between the two communities can start, because it's more about that we have to put things forward, and how OAI can help in this whole collaboration. So I've come up with some sort of a proposal, or let's say something it's more debatable. It's something we should talk about, like how different components can be placed. So this is something, let's say, based on our first pitch. This is something I came up as a proposal. So I'll let you discuss about it. Then what do you think about it?
Yeah, this is the right stack. We have heard a lot of proposals. We have to mix, we have to exchange, we have to invite ourselves. So having developers from Silva inside some workshop and so on, and vice versa. So it's the right approach.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And I think the time is right now. Projects are maturing and getting into a regular cadence of releases, and it's the right time to start having these engagements and reaching out and understanding how we interact and interwork.
Yeah, I think, without the open air interface or the components, the workloads that we've been testing with Nefio releases, I think it would have been less impressive than what it is today. So I think that it's been really instrumental on kind of being able to show what we have built so far when we have those workloads that then actually they are the proof of the machinery working that we're building. So I think there's a good place for that, those two. And then, well, I think we have beaten the horse to death with Nefio and Silva collaboration needs. So that goes without saying.
I will put my Silva hat and invite, of course. So as he was mentioning about the Nefio event, there is a Silva event as well. So we invite those communities when possible to come together so that we can share and have all the brains together and share ideas and one on the other. Then there is the strategic view as well, how we make that that relationship. And I think there is perhaps some room for the Linux Foundation networking to come and help as well as the grandfather into how to make things work. One of the things that we have done is, for example, the 5G Super Blueprint, where we can pull off these projects together into something that makes sense for the industry.
Thank you for mentioning about 5G Super Blueprints. I think that can be one of the ways to go forward. Yeah. So with this, I would like to thank you for this wonderful discussion. I'll wrap up the panel and I will let people ask some questions. So.
I'm really encouraged that the software, the open source side of the house, the projects are self-organizing, and really pleased that OAI has been able to be a valuable agent in trying to bring some of these things together by good fortune and by outreach to all of these projects. I feel like the biggest remaining challenge is that we haven't closed the loop to the ORAN side of things in particular. I do think that ORAN work in cloudification, OCloud, and maybe in SMO architecture is finding its way back to informing the architectures of Nefio. I know less about Silva and don't know exactly how those fit together, but I'm sure that's being taken into account there as well. But I think we're really close to the time where we need to close the loop to bring back the learnings of these projects into ORAN. I think it was hinted at that the OCloud work is painfully slow and painfully ineffective in a lot of ways. Not for lack of trying, and a lot of the same companies are there, but I think it would really be useful, like we've established a bit of a partnership and a cooperation agreement between OpenAirInterface and ORAN, it would be valuable, I think, to have a direct cooperation between Nefio and Silva and ORAN Alliance, directly informing how the OCloud standards could be brought in line quickly and effectively based on the work that's been done here, because I think it's a good solution for these problems. And I think also we are open in advocating that LFN can play a big role in being an umbrella to coordinate the software side of these projects and bring that whole wrapper together. So we support that initiative as well. But that's more of a comment, I guess, but I don't know if you have thoughts about how we could maybe start bringing it full circle and formally bring the work back and reflect it in the specifications.
Yeah, I think, well, when preparing for the panel, I actually had some thoughts around that. One good thing is that I see many of the same members attending all these open source projects and being active in Alliance. So one could be kind of hopeful that the targets of those members are kind of aligned when they work in the open source projects and in standardization. So that would be kind of one practical way of closing the gap or the circle, completing the circle. But then I think there is also, well, I know there is one person in the room who can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is a memorandum of understanding between ETSI and Linux Foundation Networking. And that worked for example, ONAP and ETSI ZSM collaboration. Why don't we repeat that?
I'm getting at that.
So I mean, because that would be then kind of a foundation for the people to come to the same room and discuss.
Yeah.
So that kind of take away the hurdles that there might be, and then let people talk and come up with solutions. I think that would be
I think it's the time to do that, and that will set the framework in which we can have discussions and liaison and share openly. And if LFN can be the right parent container for this, maybe it's LFN to ORAN, maybe it's Nefio to ORAN, I don't know. But I tend to think it's probably LFN, as long as Silva is fully in the fold, because I don't want Silva to be out on the side.
Agreed, yeah. But I mean, it's like, I can be naive and think that it should be now easier to draft such a MOB when we have already one in place and know how to build one.
Well, let's make that happen, because I can represent the ORAN end being in the STFG, which is the sort of outreach group that does liaison relationships, so in ORAN.
So I think you have another question, Cedric?
Thank you very much. So Canonical is also part of Silva, as SUSE and Red Hat, right? And I think what we like in Silva, I mean, the 5 pillars that you show, maybe you can go back to this slide, Saga. I think it's because these 5 pillars really create a backbone in terms of framework and integration between the different projects that we just discussed, right? I really appreciate the discussion, and I see that, if we look at those pillars, it's very clear that Nefio is contributing to the distribution cloud, right? The distributed aspect of the cloud, and the collaboration that started in Silva is really on the left with the network performance and CNF, right? And this is where OpenInterface, in my opinion, can really contribute, right, on the network performance aspect, and also obviously on the open source aspect, and proposing standardization APIs and things like that. But there are 2 other pillars, right? And I wanted to hear from you about how these 2 other pillars, security and energy efficiency, can be promoted more in Silva. I would say my question for you guys, and maybe for Orange and for the network operator, is where do you believe we need to accelerate in Silva in terms of pillars? Because mainly, as I say, the distribution cloud, there was a focus with Flux from Silva. Network performance, there was already a lot of work done in Silva. open interface needs to contribute more to Silva, I believe, right, on the two pillars I mentioned. So, but maybe we're missing something. Maybe we need to do more on the security aspect or the sustainability. Or where do you see the evolution? Where do you see the effort?
In Silva, we are driven by priorities, and priorities are the use cases. And the security use case is driven by mainly by France. Because if we want to deliver a network function in France, we have to comply with the famous ANSI standard, ANSI control authority, to make sure that the police can access to some elements, and only the police and not the operators, and so on and so on. So the security aspect is driven by this use case, and this is one of the priority. So yes, we have to accelerate on the security.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just a quick add. So, as you know, Cedric, so we have within Silva the work group 4 that is working on security aspects and how to bring the European security profiles from the specification, I will not say the specification, but into specifications that can be actually implemented in the cloud layer, right? So there is a lot of work that is being done there. And with regard to, maybe I mistake the work group 3 with the 4, but the work group 4 that is working on energy. So there is already a lot of work that's being done. First step was actually into the measurement, making sure that we can actually have the right metrics for the power consumptions of the cloud and the network functions on the cloud as well. And now we are looking into how we can influence the cloud to actually and the network functions to actually have a saving on the energy consumption of the operations. So there is some work that we're going to be disclosing that next week. I think you're going to be with us in Vienna. So we're going to be doing the point into what the results are on the 4 different work groups. And in October in Network X, we're going to be presenting as well how much we have been doing specifically on the energy efficiency with Silva.
Thank you. Thank you so much for adding on this. So with this, I would like to wrap up the session. Thank you so much. And a big round of applause for all of you. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.